Hi, my name is Boaz Ashkenazy, and I'm the co-founder of Studio 216. And Studio 216 is an immersive technology agency, a studio, and a software platform development company. And I'm an architect by training, and I came into this with a technology background about 11 years ago. So a lot has changed over this time. We started in 2005 pre-iPhone and pre-YouTube. And over time, we've developed into an agency that's been primarily focused on virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. And what I'm going to talk about today a little bit is about where we're at today. It's an interesting time. We're very, very early in the game, first inning. And I'm going to speak a little bit about what I call XR, which is really the combination of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. I'm going to do it in three parts. A little bit of a history, future trends, where I see things going, and then I'll go through some case studies and talk a little bit about the way that we've collaborated with architects and developers to create some of these immersive experiences. So a brief history. A lot of the technology that we're seeing now, a lot of the media around headsets and gloves and bodysuits and all sorts of other things have been going on for a long time. It came out of the military in the 60s. And then in the 70s, when PCs started to appear, there was a huge desire to get headsets onto people, but the computers were just not ready. And there's a concept that we hear a lot now about latency. When you put a headset on and it doesn't feel that good, or there's some kind of seasickness, they were experiencing a lot of that because the chips and the graphics cards just couldn't compute the kind of information. But they were definitely ready and wanted to make this happen. And so, in the 90s, in the early 90s, there was a huge desire to kick this into gear when the computers were ready, but the internet took over and a lot of the media focused on the internet, and VR and AR kind of went by the wayside until a guy named Palmer Luckey, who some of you guys may be familiar with, decided he was going to take the optics of iPhones and mix them with some of these old plastic headsets. And he was a gamer, and he was really interested in creating first-person shooter games. And so he set up this company called Oculus, Kickstarter campaign for around $250,000. He met his Kickstarter campaign, and Facebook got wind of it, and about 8 to 10 months later, bought his company for $2 billion. And at that moment, we knew that something was going to happen inside the space, that it wasn't just for video games and entertainment anymore, that there was going to be an enterprise play. It was going to have an impact on our lives. And Facebook, we knew, was going to take it to a consumer level, social, but we were very interested in what was going to happen in our space, which was a commercial real estate and architecture space, and then how that was going to apply to a lot of other enterprise companies. So where we stand right now after that acquisition, it really kicked off a lot of companies to get into the game after Facebook made that purchase. Now, we didn't know this at the time, but Microsoft was developing a mixed reality headset in secret. But the state of things right now, Oculus is on the top left here, and then HTC has a competing headset called Vive. So most of the high-end virtual reality that you see out there are these two competing against each other. On the bottom left is a Sony PlayStation. Sony's interesting because they came in a little bit later than these other two, but took over the market because they made their headset backward compatible to about 40 million PlayStations. And then on the bottom right is Microsoft's headset, and I'll talk more about that because we're a Microsoft agency partner, and so a lot of the work that we're doing now is around mixed reality and HoloLens, and so that's a HoloLens, and it's a mixed reality headset that has a lot of really interesting implications. So recently, the Goldman Sachs came out with some numbers of where they think this immersive technology industry is going. And it's a big number. By 2025, they're thinking it's going to be around $182 billion across lots of different verticals. And right now, we're seeing a lot of the action happening in video games and entertainment and live events, primarily. But there is going to be a huge wave that's coming, and we see design, AEC, and CRE as some of the first adopters of this technology. And then within the technology, you're going to start to see a lot of small companies pop up trying to exploit collaboration, which is going to have a big effect on how we work, education and training, different kinds of employee recruitment, and diagnostics. So I'll talk a little bit about the design and AEC portion of this, and I'll get into it more when we look at case studies. But so right now, this is an image of a HoloLens demo with a mixed reality model sitting to the left of this user, a computer screen, which is typical for the way that architects and others build models and design. And then to her right is actually a full-scale model of this motorcycle. She happens to be in Maya, but she is able to see digital objects in her real world, design and deal with those objects at full scale, at small scale, and all of this in real time is being adjusted on her machine. So it's going to have a big impact on the way that we design small objects, bigger objects, our buildings, and cities. We're seeing a huge amount of traction in education and training, especially in the construction trades. A lot of journeymen are switching the way that they want to learn, especially safety training, being able to put headsets on, get into the field virtually before having to go out there and experience it. And then diagnostics. So diagnostics has a lot of interesting implications. Microsoft and others have built a lot, Microsoft in particular has built Skype into their mixed reality headset. And so what can happen, in this case, this demo, you can bring a Skype call, an expert, into your room virtually, and they can see through your headset. And they can see exactly what you're doing, and they can mark up onto your world. So if they want you to cut a wire or make a change to whatever you're doing, they can do that. They can see through, and they can mark up. And so you're seeing them, and you're having this kind of collaboration and communication. So I think there's going to be a future where experts, at Johns Hopkins, can speak to doctors in other places and affect meaningful change in that environment through headsets like this. We've been doing a lot of our early work in commercial real estate sales. And so there's a lot of retail implications of this. And one of the things that's been interesting, and I'll speak about it in the case studies, is the way that you can have a personal connection with somebody at the same time as having a headset on. And the last one is, or the second to last, is manufacturing simulation. This seems pretty obvious. This works for construction as well as manufacturing, but being able to test and simulate lots of different configurations before you have to actually implement. And the last one that not a lot of people think about, but I think is interesting, is around recruitment. So there's a few startups that are popping up in the virtual reality space that are trying to bring workers into the culture of companies before they get jobs in order to sign them up, bringing them to events and parties and all sorts of other immersive experiences to allow them to experience company culture. So I want to talk a little bit about future trends. There's a few trends that we're seeing. We're one of the few agencies that are able to implement and see a lot of data coming back from the way that consumers are using this. Our first virtual reality experience here in Seattle for a condominium called Luma has been in existence for almost a year and a half. And so we've seen a lot of customer feedback on that. And one of the obvious but big things that we're seeing is that people want these experiences to be mobile, and they want the form factors to be much, much smaller. And we've already seen a lot of interesting traction with Google Cardboard and Gear VR. And when you look at the headset sales in 2016, the biggest winner in 2016 was Samsung. And Gear VR, they sold about 5 million headsets. The tethered headsets, which are incredible, and it's a powerful virtual reality experience, Vive and Oculus, sold 500,000 each. And so people definitely want this to be mobile, and they want it to be on their phones. The other thing that I'm seeing trend-wise is interactivity, especially on the social side. And I think we're going to see a lot more and more of this. Facebook just announced last week that they're creating a thing called Spaces, where you can go in and have social encounters with people with an Oculus headset on, watch movies together, go into rooms and talk together. And there's a startup here called Pluto that's looking at some of those same things and how to create avatars so that when we go into different environments, digital environments, we have presence, and our avatars can kind of look like who we are, or really look like who we are. But I think we're going to be able to get a lot of work done in these kind of environments, whether that is a virtual one or a mixed one. And on the bottom left, you'll see what an avatar looks like in a mixed reality space. And in this particular use case, an architect and a contractor and a developer in the room together and making decisions about where columns need to go and looking at crash detection and so on. But you can have remote and one-to-one live meetings with these headsets on. And I think that we'll start to see a lot more of these headsets in boardrooms. We're already starting to see that. And then the final one is mixed reality. So I'll take this time just to define the difference between virtual, augmented, and mixed, because there's a little confusion around that. So virtual reality, when you put a headset on, you are completely immersed in an environment. And in order for you to have any kind of social interaction with somebody, you really have to do it through an avatar. And if someone's talking to you in the space that you're in, you can hear them, but you can't see them. It's just it's very immersive, and there's a lot of presence, but you also feel a little bit disconnected. So augmented reality, the best example of that last summer was Pokemon Go. You have your iPhone, your iPad, and you can see digital things in your world. And as we saw with that trend, lots of people were getting outside and experiencing all these digital objects in their space. Mixed reality is kind of a combination of those, but because of the scanners that happen on those headsets, the power of it is that you are scanning your world in real time, everywhere that you look. And so as you look at objects in the room, it's mapping those and creating meshes of all those objects. So when you bring digital things into your space, you can drop them onto chairs, onto tables. They have physics. You can hit them off of tables. So it's really a technology that allows you to be in the real world at the same time that you're bringing digital objects into your space. And so you'll see that in these images, these are some examples of what mixed reality can be. That's the motorcycle I was telling you about earlier. She's actually kind of affecting some change to that motorcycle, the gas tank, designing the gas tank in first person, full scale. Volvo to the right has some different simulation stuff they're doing with their cars. And then on the bottom there are some experience centers that we've created for different developments around the United States. And so you can see the two with the headsets on that are looking at a project called 2&U, which the next speaker, Lisa, will talk probably more about. And in the foreground, you see a salesperson that is taking them through this experience with a surface. And the interesting thing about this experience is that unlike virtual reality, both those individuals, as they're communicating and collaborating around that building, can see the salesperson, and there's a personal connection between everybody, rather than just being locked up in a virtual world. So I'm going to end with some case studies and just talk a little bit about all these things. So virtual reality. So we just finished a project in Nashville. It's called 505. It was a large condo tower there, and they ended up deciding not to build out a traditional experience center. They cut their square footage in half that they were going to rent out. They didn't have any mock-ups at all. The only thing they had was an Oculus experience. They had a couch, a small table. It was a very, very small experience, but they were able to sell a lot of real estate using this kind of headset technology. So I'm going to go ahead and play a short little clip of this video, and you can see exactly how that worked. Well, let's move on. So WebVR. The next case study that I'm going to talk about is WebVR, that I think is a really, really powerful next step for virtual reality, and it's going to have the same forcing function that browsers had on the internet in the early days. And so we just did a project for Prologis, an industrial project here in Seattle, where we implemented this. And essentially, all the virtual reality experiences were happening in a browser on a website, which is a little different than it's happening now. Right now, a lot of the experiences are very siloed. You go to an app store, you go to a Gear VR store, and you have to download those experiences. So I think in the next couple years, you're going to start to see more and more people launch virtual, augmented, and mixed reality experiences in a browser, and it's going to have a huge effect on how fast the adoption occurs. If you're interested, you can go and check out this experience at this URL. We did a little demo for ULI and for this week, and so studio216.com/ULIVR, you can download this and check it out yourself. The second is augmented reality. Augmented reality in the urban environment and for architecture, I think, has a huge amount of potential. You can see in the foreground there is a floor plan of an office configuration, and they're holding up an iPad, and they're seeing digital geometry projected off of that piece of paper. There's nothing magic about the paper at all. It's all happening inside the device, and the software is recognizing whatever drawing is in there, and then quickly associating that model with that drawing. So you can walk into a room and urban planners can lay down a drawing set, pass out iPads or headsets, and everybody could be looking at digital information together in the same room. And then the last is mixed reality, and two big projects that we've worked on recently, one here in Seattle called 2&U, and the other one is a project in Poland and Warsaw called Generation Park, both Skanska, and both in a partnership with Skanska and Microsoft. So the holographic sales center here, which is just across the street, was the first holographic experience center in the world for real estate. And essentially, you can see these images, like I showed you before, you're able to get a multi-lens experience where you're looking at lots of different models of the city, models of buildings, and being able to go through that and back and forth, so that it's pretty flexible to how you jump around, but at all times you're able to make a personal connection with a salesperson. And I think that criteria of always being able to talk to somebody and have some sort of human experience was a key part in helping to visualize and understand and tell the story about this place. And actually, Lisa Picard, who was our main partner on this, who you'll hear next, was really, really adamant about the project being human, but also that the software that we were going to design and the experience that we were going to design also have that same element. And I think that's what pushed us towards mixed reality, because we wouldn't have been able to have that same kind of experience in virtual reality. So I'm going to try to play this video.
To jest innowacja pewnego rodzaju, której chyba ludzie za bardzo nie przewidzieli.
Powiem tylko wspaniała, no to mało coś mówi, prawda?
Połączenie młodej energii i senioralnego doświadczenia. To razem daje nową siłę.
You can see that image, and you can see what it's like to have holograms inside your space. So this is a 3-tower project right in the middle of downtown Warsaw, and so we had multiple maps of buildings, site maps of Warsaw, and we were able to quickly change that out and show lots of options and then get people down into the first-person experience of what it was like to be on that street. So to do that with real models, obviously expensive, time-consuming, and hard to change. And so in this context, I think that using mixed reality to be able to move people through in a sales environment or in a design and collaboration environment is really powerful. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about a new platform that we're developing and some problems that we see in the space that I think are going to get solved in the next 3 years, and that's around collaboration and sharing. So even though we're still kind of in the first inning of creating all this content, there's still a lot of people out there that are starting to create content. Autodesk has some tools that allow architects to create a lot of virtual reality quickly. There's a lot of small startups that are creating plugins for Revit so that people can generate content. So right now, content's easy to generate, but sharing it and distributing it is much more difficult, and especially pushing this stuff into the cloud. So our next big step is to be able to create a sharing platform across all these different XR content pieces. So VR, AR, MR, be able to put that into the cloud so everybody can share and have remote meetings one-to-one, one-to-many. And so last video, this is a video of the early agencies in the Microsoft agency program, and it's just kind of a taste about what we're in for, not just in the real estate and architecture space, but across lots of different verticals. And a lot of these early agencies were looking at consumer ways of experiencing sports, different ways of looking at data, but all through the use of HoloLens.
And how we explore the world around us. Across North America, trained agencies are digging into HoloLens developer tools and documentation, creating new models for how we design and build. Discovering unexpected ways to connect with people and brands. And reimagining how we experience sports and entertainment. This first wave of agencies is already hard at work developing groundbreaking mixed reality apps for the world's biggest companies. And this is just the beginning. We can't wait to see your vision come to life as we create the future together.
So as you can see, I'm super excited about the future. I think there's a lot of potential for this technology and the way that it's going to impact the way that we build and design and collaborate. So I really appreciate you guys giving me the time to speak to you, and I look forward to hearing Lisa speak next.